Imagine the sky suddenly turning dark. In a matter of seconds, a blinding flash cuts across the horizon. You feel the ground vibrate beneath your feet as the air around you heats up. The clouds disappear in an instant, as if they had been evaporated. The sound of a deafening boom echoes, and an unbearable heat begins to burn your skin. All this in less than a second. Now imagine that this is not a nightmare. It's real. A burst of gamma rays coming from a dying star billions of light years away, hitting Earth with enough force to destroy the ozone layer and expose the entire planet to deadly radiation. No warning, no chance of escape, just absolute silence before the final impact. But could this really happen? Or are we ignoring signs that are already in front of our eyes? If you think nothing can hit us in space, think again. Stay with me until the end to find out if humanity would have any chance of surviving this catastrophic event. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever heard about the danger of gamma ray explosions? Comment below what you think would happen if one of these explosions hit Earth. I want to see your theories, and I promise you, what you discover in this video could completely change the way you see the universe. Gamma rays, they are the most violent and energetic explosions that the universe is capable of producing. When a massive star collapses into a black hole, or when two neutron stars collide, the result is an unimaginable release of energy in a matter of milliseconds, enough to release more energy than the sun would produce in a matter of milliseconds. 10 billion years. Now, the most frightening thing, this energy travels through space in the form of a concentrated beam of extremely penetrating radiation, capable of crossing vast distances without losing strength. A single shot of gamma rays can travel billions of light years and still arrive with enough force to destroy the Earth's atmosphere. And the worst? There is no way to predict when or where this might happen. Imagine a cosmic beacon spinning through space, invisible to our eyes, charged with enough destructive power to vaporize an entire planet. This is the level of danger we are facing. Gamma rays are formed in a matter of seconds, when the core of a massive star collapses under its own gravity, creating an explosion that would eject radiation in all directions, or, in some cases, concentrated into two narrow, lethal beams, shooting like a cosmic spear through space. If Earth were to be in the path of one of these beams, the result would be devastating. But don't think that this is just a remote hypothesis. Astronomers have already detected gamma-ray bursts in distant galaxies, some so powerful that even billions of light-years away, they were visible to instruments here on Earth. The strongest event ever recorded occurred in 2013, when a gamma-ray burst was detected by the Swift Space Telescope. The data showed that this explosion released an amount of energy equivalent to 5 billion supernovae. All this in less than a minute. What if something like that happened in our galaxy? Scientists calculate that if a gamma-ray burst occurred at 6,000 light-years away and was pointed directly at Earth, the impact would be capable of destroying the ozone layer in seconds, exposing the entire planet to the sun's deadly ultraviolet radiation. Cosmic radiation would cause an instantaneous mass extinction, killing plants, animals, and irreversibly affecting the food chain. Gamma rays are a real threat. But what makes this even more worrying is the fact that there is no defense possible. Unlike asteroids or solar flares, gamma rays do not emit any kind of early signal. They just appear, a beam of death traveling at the speed of light. When the first signal arrives, it will be too late. But has this ever happened before? Or worse, are we already under the effect of an explosion that we haven't felt yet? If a gamma-ray burst were to hit Earth directly, the initial impact would be devastating. The intense radiation would pierce the atmosphere in fractions of a second, generating a blinding flash that would make the sky appear to be on fire. The temperature on the surface would increase brutally, burning any living being exposed to. The external environment. Without the protection of the ozone layer, ultraviolet radiation would reach the surface directly, causing severe burns and beginning a process of mass destruction of plant and animal life. Oceans would begin to evaporate in some regions, and ecosystems would collapse almost instantly. Ionizing radiation would directly affect the DNA of cells, causing irreversible mutations in any surviving organism. The biological cycle would be disrupted in a matter of hours, while the sky would become a veil of energetic charged particles, blocking sunlight and plunging the planet into an ominous darkness. Communication and energy systems would be destroyed on the spot. Satellites would be burned, electrical grids would collapse, and any electronic device would be rendered useless. Earth would become a disconnected planet, with no means of contact, no direction, a scenario of total isolation. Now think with me. We are talking about an event that could literally end civilization in a matter of seconds. And the scariest thing, it could be happening right now, billions of light years away, and we would have no way of knowing. By the time the signal arrived, it would be too late. The question is, why is hardly anyone talking about this? If you've made it this far, it's because you really want to understand what's at stake. So take advantage and leave yours like now. This makes this type of content reach more people. Because let's face it, this is the type of information that everyone should know. Furthermore, YouTube will only continue recommending videos like this if you interact, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Because what I'm about to tell you now could completely change what you believe about the future of humanity. What if I told you that there is evidence that a gamma-ray burst may have already caused a mass extinction in the past? What guarantees us that it could not happen again, perhaps sooner than we think? If the initial radiation from a gamma-ray burst were not enough to end life on Earth, the secondary effects on living beings would be even more devastating and irreversible. Direct exposure to cosmic radiation would have a profound impact on the genetic code of organisms. The cells of living beings would be bombarded by ionizing radiation, fragmenting DNA, and causing massive genetic mutations. The first signs of ecological collapse would appear in the oceans. Phytoplankton, responsible for approximately 70% of the oxygen produced on Earth, would be one of the first to disappear due to radiation. Without it, the base of the marine food chain would collapse, leading to the mass extinction of fish, marine mammals, and other species that depend on these organisms. On dry land, the impact would be equally catastrophic. Plants, exposed to radiation, without any atmospheric protection, would lose their ability to carry out photosynthesis. Trees and vegetation would quickly dry out, causing a domino effect on the food chain. Herbivores would die without food, predators would be left without prey, and the ecological balance would be disrupted in a matter of weeks. The ionizing radiation would profoundly affect organisms that survived the initial impact. Genetic mutations would appear at an accelerated rate, creating physical deformations and behavioral changes. Insects with stunted wings, mammals with genetic flaws, and organisms with reproductive difficulties would become the norm in an environment where natural selection would become meaningless. Life would continue, but in a way that would be nothing like what we know today. The destruction of food chains and ecological collapse would create a scenario of global hunger. With the disappearance of plants and marine food sources, any living thing that depended on these resources would face extinction in a matter of weeks. The few surviving organisms would be those capable of withstanding extreme levels of radiation and high temperatures, creating a new type of natural selection based on genetic resistance to environmental chaos. If humans survived the initial impact, they would face a new challenge: the Earth's environment itself. Ionizing radiation would weaken the immune system, making remaining populations vulnerable to disease and infection. Reproduction would become extremely difficult due to genetic mutations, leading to an inevitable population decline. But the impact on life is just the beginning. What would happen to the planet's climate and balance after destruction on this scale? The destruction of the ozone layer and the direct impact of cosmic radiation would cause an unprecedented collapse in the Earth's climate system. Solar radiation would penetrate directly into the atmosphere, heating the oceans to extreme levels. This increase in sea temperatures would result in a massive release of water vapor into the atmosphere, creating a runaway greenhouse effect and raising global temperatures in a matter of weeks. Ocean currents, which regulate the planet's thermal balance, would collapse. Hurricanes with winds exceeding 500 km/h, they would become constant events, devastating cities and permanently altering coastal geography. Tornadoes would emerge in areas where they had never been recorded, while electrical storms would sweep across continents uninterruptedly. Rising global temperatures would accelerate the melting of polar ice caps, causing ocean levels to rise rapidly. Coastal regions would be swallowed by the sea, forcing entire populations to migrate inland, only to find an equally hostile environment. This sudden rise in ocean levels would also affect water salinity, further destabilizing sea currents and intensifying the cycle of climate destruction. Extreme heat and excess vapor in the atmosphere would alter the cycle of seasons, making summer permanent in some regions, while others would be hit by extreme and constant winters. Fertile zones would turn into barren deserts, while other areas would face torrential rains and devastating floods. The combination of heat and humidity would make life in some parts of the planet unbearable. In the oceans, rising temperatures would release methane clathrates, frozen gas deposits located on the seabed. Methane, which is tens of times more efficient than carbon dioxide in retaining heat, would further accelerate the global warming process. This cycle of methane release and temperature increase would create a chain reaction of no return. Tropical forests like the Amazon, which depend on a delicate balance of temperature and humidity, would disappear completely. Destroying forests would eliminate the carbon absorption cycle, releasing even more CO2 into the atmosphere and intensifying the greenhouse effect. Vegetation would not be able to regenerate due to extreme temperatures and the lack of regular rain. The climate stability that has supported life on Earth for millions of years would collapse. The planet would face a scenario of permanent atmospheric imbalance, with the climate oscillating between extremes of heat and cold, constant storms, and devastating droughts. This process of climate self-destruction would continue until thermal balance was restored, something that could lead to millions of years. The scariest thing is that this cycle of destruction could not be stopped by any human action. The combination of radiation, greenhouse effect, and ocean warming would create a constantly deteriorating environment, leading the planet to a state of atmospheric instability comparable to that of Venus, an irreversible climate hell. Now, think with me. Everything I just told you is not a distant hypothetical scenario. It's a real possibility. If the planet's climate cycle enters this point of no return, there will be no going back. And the worst thing is that the first signs of this imbalance are already appearing. But now, I want to hear from you. If the planet began to descend into permanent climate chaos, what do you believe would happen first? Would extreme temperatures make life impossible, or would ocean collapse lead to complete destruction of the planet? I want to read your opinion here in the comments, because the answers to this mystery may lie in points of view that we have not yet explored. But what if the destruction of Earth wasn't the end? What if there was something even darker, lurking, something that could completely redefine humanity's future? The psychological and social impact of an event of this magnitude would be devastating and immediate. Without electricity, without communication, and without the food supply, chaos would take over the cities in a matter of days. Markets would be looted, the security system would collapse, and the instinct for survival would override any sense of civilization. The struggle for basic resources, food, water, and shelter would trigger an uncontrollable wave of violence. Law and order would disappear. Armed groups and local militias would take control of territories, imposing their own rules and eliminating any opposition. Governments would be unable to coordinate a large-scale response without communication. And without central command, military and police forces would act in a fragmented manner or simply abandon their positions. Power would fall into the hands of local leaders and paramilitary groups, creating an environment of force-based domination. The lack of information and sensory deprivation would directly affect the mental state of survivors. Without answers, without signs of recovery, and living under constant threat, despair and paranoia would take over the population. Depression, fear, and emotional collapse would become the natural state of the human mind in this new scenario. The concept of civilization, as we know it today, would disappear. Without infrastructure, without a security system, and without any expectation of restoring order, the world would regress to a state of primitive survival, where the strongest would dictate the rules and the survival instinct would define who lives and who dies. But what if surviving the initial impact wasn't enough? What if the real challenge wasn't just staying alive, but dealing with a planet that can no longer sustain us? If the initial radiation did not kill all humans, environmental collapse and scarcity of basic resources would cause the remainder of the population to succumb within a matter of months. The destruction of ecosystems would make agriculture impossible, while the few remaining animals and plants would not be enough to sustain human life. Ionizing radiation, even at residual levels, would continue to affect the human body irreversibly. Genetic mutations, cancer and autoimmune diseases would become common among the few survivors. Reproduction would be almost impossible, and population decline would happen quickly and inevitably. Small groups could find refuge in underground shelters or military installations far from the toxic surface. However, keeping these shelters functional long-term would be an unsustainable challenge. Radiation and environmental contamination could affect air and water filtration systems, compromising even the most protected locations. The lack of food and extreme confinement would generate internal conflicts, causing social collapse to spread even to the few organized survivors. The Earth's surface would remain toxic and uninhabitable for thousands of years. Residual radiation, combined with climate and ecological destruction, would create an environment similar to that of Venus, with extreme temperatures, constant storms, and unbreathable air. Even if primitive life forms managed to adapt, they would evolve into something unrecognizable compared to what we know today. Human beings, who have survived and evolved in adverse conditions for millennia, would find themselves facing an insurmountable obstacle. Extinction would not come from a direct impact or an explosion. It would come slowly through starvation, disease, and the absolute collapse of living conditions. The idea of rebuilding civilization would become just a distant and unattainable concept. Despite the catastrophic scenario, scientists are already studying ways to predict and react to a gamma-ray burst. Telescopes like SWIFT have already detected explosions in distant galaxies, but the problem lies in the speed of light. Any signal that reaches us would indicate that the explosion has already happened and that its effects are already underway. Unlike asteroids or solar flares, which can be deflected or mitigated, a gamma-ray burst offers no room for reaction. The radiation would travel at absolute speed, meaning that by the time it was detected, the impact would have already occurred. The only real possibility of survival would be to detect the explosion years in advance, which would require cosmic monitoring technology that does not yet exist. Even if we could identify an imminent explosion, there would not be enough time to divert or neutralize the effects. Some scientists theorize that high-depth underground shelters could offer initial protection against radiation. But even in these cases, prolonged exposure to residual radiation and subsequent environmental collapse would make long-term survival virtually impossible. The planet, without a functional atmosphere and a destroyed ecosystem, would not be able to sustain human life for a long time. The reality is that with current technology, surviving an event of this scale would be a matter of pure luck, and, even then, only for a limited time. The only real way out would be to escape Earth itself. But would humanity have the time and resources to find a new home before the worst happened? You just discovered something few people know, and that's big. Gamma-ray bursts could be the universe's biggest hidden danger, and almost no one is talking about it. Then, share now with that friend who loves mysteries of the cosmos, and let's take this conversation to another level. The more people who know about this threat, the greater the chance of finding answers. The idea that a gamma-ray burst could destroy life on Earth is not just a futuristic hypothesis. There is scientific evidence that this may have happened before. Studies on sediment layers dating from ca. 440 million years ago revealed traces of cosmic radiation associated with one of the most devastating extinction events in the history of the planet. The extinction of Ordoviciano-Siluriano. During this period, the oceans suffered a sudden ecological collapse, and the marine food chain was destroyed in a surprisingly short amount of time. Scientists believe that a burst of gamma rays from a nearby supernova may have destroyed the ozone layer and exposed Earth's surface to lethal ultraviolet radiation, enough to trigger a chain reaction in marine life. Rock layers from that time show abnormal levels of radioactive isotopes, compatible with intense exposure to cosmic radiation. This pattern is consistent with the effects that a gamma-ray burst would cause today. Destruction of atmospheric shielding, increased solar radiation, and immediate environmental collapse. The most worrying thing is that, according to astronomers, there are a significant number of massive stars close to the final stage of life in our galaxy. Some of them could generate a gamma-ray burst at any time. And if one of these bursts were pointed directly at Earth, the result could be identical to the event that occurred millions of years ago. If this has happened before, could it happen again? Science suggests so, and the point is not whether a gamma-ray burst will hit Earth again, but when. Life on Earth may have withstood a cosmic event in the past, but would human civilization, with its dependence on technology and environmental balance, have the same chance of survival? A gamma-ray burst is the kind of event that redefines the course of life on a planet, and Earth is not immune to it. Science has already revealed that these explosions may have caused mass extinctions in the past. And what makes this threat even more unsettling is the fact that we have no control over it. Faced with such an unpredictable cosmic force, the question that remains is, what do we have left? Should we simply accept fate or continue searching for answers, even though we know the odds are against us? The truth is that the unknown has always been the greatest impetus for human progress. It was curiosity that led us to explore the far reaches of space, and it may be what will give us a chance to survive. Now I want to hear from you. If you knew that a gamma-ray burst was on its way to Earth, what would you do? Tell me in the comments, because some answers may be more surprising than we imagine. Here, every question leads to a new mystery, and there's so much more waiting to be explored. If you want to continue uncovering the darkest and most fascinating secrets of the universe, subscribe to the channel now. Being a part of this is more than watching videos. It's embarking on a journey to understand what truly exists beyond the limits of our understanding. Each theory, each discovery takes you beyond what the eyes can see, and what you just saw is just one piece of the puzzle. The next revelation could completely change what we know about the universe. Get ready for the next video, because some answers lead to even more disturbing questions.